Bom dia, meu nome é Marcos, eu falo muito pouquinho português, a apresentação vai ser em inglês. So welcome everyone, my name is Marcos, I'm going to present myself pretty quick. My name is Marcos, the hard last name. You can find me in all the social media at Marcos Nils. I'm the head of research and development of Mantica, which is a startup based in Canada, in Montreal. We do machine learning as a service, basically. I love open source and Golang mostly. I do everything in containers as well. I belong to the maintainerity team, which we basically suffer the pain and the passion of doing open source. I have a lot of active projects, a lot of Golang active projects, but the most popular one is the Redis, which is the Java library for Redis. So if someone has ever done something with Java and Redis, you're probably using my code, so I strongly encourage you to change it. No, it's just a joke. Well, I have a lot of projects. You can check it at my GitHub repo. I belong to the Docker Captains team, which we supposedly are Docker experts, but I don't know what that is. And then I love like barbecue, sailing, doing CrossFit. I love all kinds of sports, basically. So while I was doing this presentation, so I basically wanted to show you a testing framework that I did like a couple of years ago. So I did it when Go was 1.1, I believe. It was around 2013. And while I was doing the presentation, I was thinking, okay, but instead of showing you what the framework does, I would like to talk about Golang testing in general, and not testing in terms of the good practices of testing and all the stuff, because I know that you all should know that. But instead of the actual testing like ecosystem or the actual way of doing testing in Golang right now. So I'm going to talk about these three subjects. I'm going to talk first about testing in general. Then I'm going to talk about why we did Goblin in the first place. And then I'm going to show some examples and usage of the library, basically. So let's start with testing. So if you're starting Go and you're writing your own program, a very basic example or a very small application, you probably don't need any testing framework. So one thing about Go is that the standard library and all the packages that come with the language are like amazing. They are super simple. They are well documented. You can do pretty much everything that you like with that. So it's not like in some of the languages when you like start using the language, you just go ahead and look, okay, I want a REST framework for this language, or I want a testing framework for this language. Like for example, in Python with PyUnit, or in Node.js with Mocha, or any language that you like. So yeah, I encourage you, if you start with Go, just don't look for any Golang testing frameworks. I know there are many of them. I'm going to just mention some of them in a couple of minutes. But if you just look at the STD, then you're going to find pretty much everything you need, and it's going to be super simple and super easy to get started with it. Also, it's important that by not introducing any language frameworks, you're not confusing people like by making them learn a new DSL to start using testing. So it's important that we all speak the same language in terms of how to write tests. But one thing about Golang testing is that even though everyone is saying just use the standard library, it seems like all the major blogs and projects are not using the SCD at all. I mean, they are using it for some things, but for other things they are using like frameworks. So if you look at Kubernetes, for example, or Docker, they are using, Kubernetes is using, and I don't have a screen, I think it's on eco, I don't know what mode. Kubernetes is using GoCheck, I believe. It's one, Gingo, sorry. Gingo, which is a testing framework, for those who know it. And Docker is using GoCheck for some things, integration stuff. So the good and the bad thing about that is that even though the frameworks allows you to do some cool stuff, if you're a newcomer and you only know Go, you need to go ahead and read all the framework documentation, which is quite a pain, right? I mean, some testing frameworks have a lot of pages and a lot of sub-modules. Like there's one module for testing, there's one module for the assertions, there's one module for end-user testing, one module for web testing. And it's quite annoying to get started with that. And if we get our screen back, it seems like the projector went off. But in any case, there are some other blog posts of like good, like important Golang members For example, Ben Johnson, there's a nice post about Ben Johnson that said, don't use test frameworks. But in his post, if you is the second title, the third title, sorry, in that post you are going to see that even though he says don't use frameworks, he recommends like wrapping up stuff like assertions or stuff into functions, so you can reuse them in your code. But the thing is that if you need to reuse those functions in some other project, you have to extract them as a library. And if you are extracting testing helpers as a library, you are doing a test framework, right? Because as you can reuse in some other projects. The same happens with test helpers. If you have seen this presentation, which is quite nice, I totally recommend it, which is Michel Hashimoto from HashiCorp. He describes how they do testing in HashiCorp in all their projects. And he talks about test helpers, right? Which is pretty much the same thing that I said about assertions. So even though everyone say that they don't need like testing frameworks, it seems like the big projects are using it because it's useful underneath. I mean, you're like abstracting assertions so you can reuse them in all your projects. You are 3D printing stuff to your terminal so you can see better the results. So the reason that why we did Goblin at the first place was because of this, right? We saw that some things were missing in the testing environment, and then we decided to add like the minimum necessary features to make testing like a more enterprise solution. So if you see testing right now, if you look for like testing stuff in Go, you're going to at some point you're going to see this chart, which is all the different test frameworks. So you have like Go Combi, the standard Go library, which is the second column. You're going to see Testify, Goblin, something over there, Pretty Test, and Gingo, which are the most popular ones, but there are many others. And you're going to see that, I don't know who did this, I don't remember, but they're pretty much like comparing them in terms of functionalities or like the features that the testing framework has. So when we came through this, you're going to see that Goblin is like the fourth column. We don't have pretty much any of that. So, and I especially like this last row, which says a bunch more. So Goblin doesn't have a whole bunch more features, which I don't know what that is, but it's interesting. So when we saw this, we said, I don't give a damn. You know, I mean, we really don't care about if Goblin implements all these features or not. I mean, we don't care if we implement like a web browser application where it tells you all the tests that fail or not, because we aim Goblin to be a really simple framework that helps to solve like the really simple problems that you see when you start using Go testing at scale, like in big projects. So let's start with the first example, even though you might not see the colors very well. So the first example is outputs, right? When you have a big project with a lot of tests, you're going to see that like this is happening. So this is the console output of the Docker master Jenkins. So I know that Jess helped a lot in setting this up, so that's pretty nice. And the thing about Docker is that it has a lot of tests. So if you scroll down, this output is actually like a fail output, right? So it tells that the test failed. You're going to see that it's running a lot of stuff here, like a lot of tests. So if this failed, you should go to the end and you're going to see that, okay, this failed, but it doesn't say which test failed, right? Which is not good. And it doesn't say also which line it failed. So if I need to find here which test failed, the output that failed, I'll have to scroll all over this place, or I'll have to hit Ctrl F and look for fail in this whole output. And there you have it. So this is the test that failed actually, it's in that line and that number, but I'll have to do, if you run this in your terminal, you need to search through the whole terminal history to find this, right? Whether if I scroll to the end, which is the place where I would look for the error, it's not there. So that's one thing that Goblin helps to achieve, right? So if you look at this output, any of you used Mocha from Node.js, the testing framework? So this output, it follows the same principle as Mocha. So basically it runs all your tests. It will tell why it's running the test with different colors, if the test is red or green. And at the end, it will print the output of that run, and it will tell you, hey, this test failed, and this is the line where the test is failing. So I'm going to show you a quick demo right now. So if you see the terminal. Basically, we have this several testing. So this basically runs a lot of tests in Go. So I do Go test -b. So this is the first thing that we saw, like with the Docker example. So this basically are a lot of Golang tests, like native tests. It runs 50 test cases, and it has one test case that fails. But if I look at the bottom of the terminal, I don't see which test failed, right? So I don't know where to look at. So basically, I need to scroll up until I see somewhere. You should see, I believe it here, like this test, the one at the top, test 25, fail, which is not pretty nice. But if I do the same thing with Goblin, several testing. Let's run the same example with Goblin. So we're going to do the same thing, which is go test -b. But this is different, right? So you see that 49 tests completed, and it will tell you, hey, so test number 25 failed. It will show you the error message, while the assertion error, and it will print like the small stack trace telling you, hey, the fail.
Can you highlight the terminal?
Sure. So let me see. So this is not very nice. So you will see the stack trace, and you will say, okay, 49 tests completed, 1 test failed, test 25, and here you have the stack trace, and it will tell you, okay, your test failed in main test.go, line 36. Which is nice, right? I mean, it might not be like something super important, but for a project which has a lot of tests, which is our case, this helps a lot to see, like, you go to the end, you see why it failed, and you can move on. So moving to the next part is BDD flexibility and test suites, basically, test suites. Another thing that we noticed that a lot of projects were doing that we actually weren't, and they were doing some hacky stuff to run tests, is like the ability to, within a test, write, within a test function, write several other functions. So then when you can run this, you can say, okay, I want to run this test suite only, and I don't want to run all the tests or only just one test. This has been achieved, or this has been implemented in the last Go version. So if you check Go 1.7, it has like sub-tests and sub-benchmarks. So this is pretty much similar to that, but we did this like 4 years ago in the first version of Goblin. And we did this because we looked at some other test frameworks, and we said, okay, this is something quite useful. I mean, I would like to have like test accounts suite, and then within that test accounts, I can create, I can test create account, delete account, get account, or whatever. So it's pretty much useful. And it also gives you the flexibility to describe tests in a more BDD way. I mean, we didn't think about BDD like to be something imperative in Goblin, but as we were like replicating Mocha, and we thought, okay, Mocha is pretty nice to write tests, it's pretty simple, then we decided to include it. And this gives you like a lot of flexibility, as I said. So I'm going to show you another example here, where I have this several test suite. So what I can do with Goblin, I'm going to show you this file. So I have this the same example that I have in my slides. So I have one suite that runs. It has a describe block which runs something, and you can nest describe blocks as many times as you want. So this is good for flexibility. I mean, you can do a describe block and init test, and then as many describe blocks as you want. So the good thing about doing this is that if you check the first block, which is this one, this has 2 its, right? It should do something, and it should handle the suite 1. So I can do go test run, go test, and I can do dash run, which is run this specific test, and it's going to be test suite. And in this case, test suite suite 1, test suite 1. And in this case, it only ran test suite 1. And test suite 1 has 2 tests, as you can see. So this one and this one. So this one and this one, right? So it's only running that suite. And if I want to run the second suite, it's only just changing the parameter, and that's it. So it's running only the suite 2. Additionally, Goblin allows you to run only one test if you want. So let's say that I want to run the test that says do something. So I can do go test dash goblin.run, the same way as the run command, but just appending Goblin. And I can put a regex here like do something. And as you can see, it's running the do something for the both suites, right? So there. So it's running the do something test for the suite 1 and do something test for the suite 2, which is pretty nice, right? Because you can like set up running based on suites or based on specific tests. So usually when I code and I get an error from a test, I don't run the whole bunch thing again. I just fix the error and run only that error or only the test suite to make sure that the fix that you're applying does not break the whole suite in terms of functionality. But again, this has been achieved by Go 1.7, so if you're not using Goblin, which is what I, or any other testing framework, which is what I encourage you, you are going to be okay. So let me switch, okay, perfect, PDD. Timeouts. Timeouts is another thing which is quite important in testing. If you actually go and watch, check this Go issue, you're going to see that someone actually proposed to include like specific test timeouts, which is something that the standard package doesn't have. So by default, if you do a sleep in the Go tests, I think the default timeout is 10 minutes. So you could be waiting like for a long time if you forgot to specify that. And you can't actually say, okay, this test is only going to have 1 second of timeout because I know this needs to run super fast in comparison to the other tests. So one thing that we thought about adding to Goblin that we took from other libraries or testing approaches is a global timeout, which is what the standard library already has. A slow test report, which we find super useful. Like when you have a test that runs in less than 5 seconds and all of a sudden test started running like around 4 seconds or something, it would be nice to see it on the test run. And an individual timeout, which is what that issue is, which has been closed. I think that issue has been closed, but not because the adding individual timeout is a bad thing. It's because the guy who reported the issue was saying, hey, I have an issue with this test, so I would like to implement an individual timeout. But I believe that Russ Cox actually commented, okay, the problem is in your test, not in the timeout thing. But he also said, I think the timeout thing is useful, but you need to like you need to provide a case which actually makes sense in order to implement it, basically. So following with the examples, I'm going to show you why we did this specifically, so you can see it in a real use case. So I'm going to, if you see this main test file, you're going to see that I have a test. This is a standard test which doesn't have any timeout. This is a test which basically goes beyond the standard timeout, which is 5 seconds. So you're going to see that it fails because of timeout. This is a test that runs in about 90% of the time of the timeout. So you're going to see that Goblin is going to show you, okay, this test is slow because it consumes almost all of the timeout. And this is the thing that we implemented. So Goblin has a g.timeout function that will allow you to override the defaults for that specific test. So if you have a test that, like, for some reason, I don't know, this test, let's say that it needs to do some setting up with the database, or I don't know, do something. You need to call the web and crawl all the web or something. You can just override this, and you're going to be okay. So if I do go test -b, you're going to see the output. It takes a while to run because it's using the default timeout. So let's wait a little bit. Here you can see this slow test report that I was saying, and then it finished. So as you can see, I have the first test is like the normal situation where the test runs usually way beneath the timeout threshold. Then you're going to see the test that failed because of the timeout, and you're going to see the error test exceeded the 5-second default timeout. Then you're going to see two slow tests, which is the one that was near the global timeout, and the other one which was near also the overridden timeout value. So I believe this is pretty nice, and I would love to see something like this in the STD, to be honest. I mean, if you could actually override the timeout for a specific test. But I don't know, maybe if I have some time I will propose it, or anyways, let's say. Okay, next thing, overhead. This is something important when you're using any library, but for testing libraries it's also very important. I don't know you, but when I include a library in my project, I usually make sure that the library is small enough so it doesn't the dependency tree doesn't kill my CI or whatever, right? So the good thing about Goblin is that if you do a go-get about Goblin, Goblin doesn't depend on any other library. It's written from scratch, it's written all in standard Go. Even though we print colors and we do some crazy stuff, it's all native Go, so it doesn't have any other dependency. And the best thing is that the whole library package is only 500K, but actually if you look at the different outputs, it's 500K because of the Git files. So if you only take the Goblin code, it's only around 30K or 200K or something like that. So which is pretty nice. I mean, if you vendor Goblin, I wouldn't recommend it because Goblin is small and we usually don't change the API. But if you vendor Goblin in your project because you want to have it in your own repo, you will only be vendoring 200K, which is pretty much nothing. And it's important to notice this because some other libraries, some frameworks, testing frameworks are huge. I mean, if you clone them, you are usually cloning 20 megabytes or something for a test framework because they depend on some other libraries as well. Another important thing is that the learning curve and complexity, right? So, and this is also important. So if you already know Mocha, or you already know BDD because you come from Ruby or some other language that uses this approach, then you're ready to go, right? I mean, you just need to describe the blocks and that's it. It also has a simple README file. So if you go to the Goblin page, there is no tough documentation at all. So you just read. It also has a cool logo. But if you go here, this is all the documentation that you're going to have. I mean, there's no wiki page. There's no HTML GitHub page that has tons of pages. And because what happened to me when I was looking at other frameworks is that I didn't know actually where to start. I mean, I was looking at other frameworks and I was looking at a bunch of documentation, and I got lost pretty easy. So this is something that you can actually simple documentation to start. And this is something really cool that it has Beam snippets for the Beam Power users that you can actually use to write faster your tests. So I'm going to show you that right now. So I'm going to create a new test. So I'm going to create a package which is Beam test. And if you go to let me show you, it wasn't showing my terminal here. What I would like to show you is that you have these, you only need to grab these, there should be a snippets file, Go snippets. So if you paste these snippets into your Go snippets, if you are using any snippet, you're going to be okay. So going to the demo, so I'm going to create a new package which is Beam test. And then I'm going to create a new test file. Okay, so I'm here. So basically I'm going to do fun test beam t testing t, right? And now I'm going to use my Power Beam snippets. So I can do, for instance, if I press in my keyboard GD and I press tab, you're going to see you have a describe block. So you can say, okay, this is describe, and then I press tab again, I go inside it and I do git. It creates an each block, should do something, and so on. And one cool thing that Goblin has, which is pretty nice, is before each, after and after each blocks. Well, I'm pretty sure that you know what that is because of the name. So if I come here and I say GB, it adds a before block. The before block will run the code that's in there, before all the test suites, right? So it would only run once there, which is nice. And if I do GBE, it's before each block. So that before each block will run before each test. So let's say that you want to create something in the DB before each test, then you do something with the test, and then you want to remove it before the next run, you can do it. And you also have like GA, which is after, and the GAE, which is after each as well. Another important thing about each blocks, which are the blocks that run the tests, is that you can do asynchronous tests as well. So let's say that you have some Go routine that running a test. So you can do GAT or gate, and you have the eat block, and in the function you're going to have a done parameter. So whenever you call that done parameter, you can call it like with no parameters or with a parameter. If I do this, for instance, if I say it failed, then it's going to mark the test that that failed. And if you don't pass anything to this function, then it's going to say that the function succeeded. So Beam snippets, that's quite nice. I believe Beam is one of the best tools besides Bash. And this slide doesn't want to run, but it's here. Okay, and it has a good logo, as I said before. It's running here. And it has a good logo. I need to say that again. Okay, you can see it here. It has a nice logo, and thank you very much. I believe that was it. And again, please you don't need a testing framework. If you're going to start a project, I would encourage you to not use any of these frameworks, none of them. So start writing your code, start looking at your outputs and what you need from your application. And if you feel like you need something easy, small, and like easy to learn and to distribute at your teams, I encourage you to watch Goblin. Thank you.
Obrigado, Marcos. Enquanto a gente vai trocando aqui, alguém gostaria de fazer uma pergunta para o Marcos?
About the timeouts that you configure, how do you determine when a test is going slow? You have like the span of the maximum timeout, and then you say like on 10% of the time it's slow test, and if that's like that, how can you configure in Goblin that span?
Yeah, right now the way that it's determining that the test is slow is like if it takes 90% or more of the specified timeout, then it will show you that it is slow. We haven't done that as a parameter, but it should be fairly easy to do. So if you'd like to contribute in open source, please create a pull request, and I will surely merge it because it seems like it is useful.
So exactly, yeah. Depending on the test, you can like, I don't know, database tests can take longer, or sometimes you can like.
So you can specify like the slowness threshold or something like that, and then we can apply it. Yeah, thank you. Nice idea. Any other questions? Okay.
Muito obrigado, Marcos. Valeu.
Obrigado.